So here we are. But you and I just talked out into the void yesterday with the first time we did this
Mhm.
and just waited to see what would happen. A whole bunch of people jumped on board onto the Story Studio Network Facebook page and have liked the page. So that's taken off already. I don't know about you, but it's prompted a lot of questions among my colleagues about, okay, what is it you're doing here? What
Yes.
exactly is this? We got into the conversation part of it yesterday. And if you missed that, you can go back and watch. But this is bigger than a podcast series.
Oh, completely. And yes, there's people liking us on Facebook, also a bunch of people following us now over on Instagram, where we're at Story Studio Network on Instagram as well. We have a Twitter feed. Like, this is legit. We're standing up a YouTube channel. But let's talk about what the network is, because I think there are some fair questions there and assumptions that it's a podcast with you and I, which this kind of is. But what this is, Story Studio Daily, is our opportunity to talk about actually the business. So it's like a very meta thing where every day we're going to talk about what we see in the trends in the industry. But the network model is back to what we talked about yesterday, conversations, is that our plan is to bring, essentially, I've called it the view but a podcast. So
Yeah.
that seems to be the way that most people understand it. So picture this. You have a round table, you bring four voices to the table from adjacent, overlapping, or a better word to say would be non-competing sectors or industries. And either you or I or one of our esteemed colleagues who we are going to be bringing into the network, who is a trained journalist, a trained talk show host, is going to step in and guide the conversation. And why is that valuable? It's valuable because you don't as a business leader or as a thought leader or as somebody who has a researcher or something to say, you don't all of a sudden have to start thinking about, how do I also be a podcaster? Right? Like, you have the benefit of sounding off of other professional voices in a safe environment and having a professional guide you to sharing what you actually need to share, and only focusing on that.
Yeah, I've talked to some people and I like the way you put it. This is like this a talk show network, and we'll
Mhm.
we'll, we'll choose the various subject funnels or verticals that we'll look at. But it's people keep saying, "Was it like sitting down on a panel in a conference?" It's not like that at all. Because
No.
if you go to conference A and it's all about widgets, and everybody on the panel is a widget expert or somehow they affect it. This is more like, as Aaron points out, the idea that we have four different points of view on an issue. And yesterday you brought up an important one, just well-being.
Yeah.
And in the next normal, we'll probably start talking about that a little bit. Like, how do we define well-being? We'll get
Mhm.
into that conversation. But I think that there will be an opportunity just to have four people sit down, talk about the issue of the day through that well-being lens as they see it. So it
Yes.
could be a marketer who is all of a sudden now trying to cope with expectations of consumers and corporations. It's a different conversation that's going on around our well-being. And that could be as broad as the skin lotion that you buy or the home renovation that you're doing when you really think about it. So there's a
Mhm.
bigger, broader discussion around some of these things that we would have otherwise taken for granted. And I've said this before, but I think really all of these conversations are really going to highlight and test our understanding of what we value.
And speaking of value, so the other thing I like about this model, and I was talking to a client yesterday, and because we're working on it at aarontrafford.com, we're working on a launch next week of a brand new low cost, high value product. But it took me a really long time to think of the model. I knew what I wanted to do, but the model took me a while to think. And I said to her, I spent 2 weeks throwing rocks at the ocean every day just to try to break my brain and come up with this model. So that's what it was for Story Studio. And it's a model of having a conversation and a podcast, because let's be real, the world is moving toward audio marketing. Our brains process it better. We remember things we hear better. It is becoming the marketer's top choice for branded content. All the data shows that. So let's bring that back and talk about, what do we value? We value conversation. But what do we value as business owners? Conversions. So when you have a podcast and it's just you, and you're having to hire a podcast manager to go get guests to bring the guests on the show, and then you have to figure out how to manage the guests so that they're not taking over the messaging of your property, it gets really muddy. Come into a roundtable discussion, guided, where you get to show up as you, and all of a sudden you're playing off people who are at your level, and your circle of influence grows without you having to do much pushing. So when we look at value too, you talk about having a marketer and then a researcher, and then maybe it's a writer or a blogger on the same show. You cross pollinate your audience in a very natural way that's easy for the audience to understand, and it's high value for you as somebody who wants to create branded content.
Yeah,
Am
and
I
that's
making
that's
sense?
yeah, no, that's the key. I think that we are creating branded content so that when you step into the studio network here and you're around the table, you own the content. That's
Hmm.
how this works, right? So effectively, you are a sponsor of the show,
Hmm.
and we bring it all together that way. Aaron and I provide the executive producer package for you to do all of those things that just don't come naturally to other people, whether
Hmm.
that is just feeling comfortable sitting here and doing this, or all the editing and all the nonsense that goes on in the background. That's what we bring to the table, and the guidance around this.
Yeah.
There will also be this level of coaching in terms of performance, because as Aaron notes, the whole idea of this is to make eye contact with an audience you cannot see, and it's not the easiest thing. So
No, and I kick myself for resisting stepping into this role as a network owner and an executive producer for so long, because I don't know about you, but when I meet somebody, within about 10 minutes of me talking to them, the thought will drop in my brain, I want to produce them every time. And so this is our opportunity to find and invite people who feel like they have stories to tell, who want to do it in a really focused and clear way, and an engaging way, and a creative way, to be produced by professionals, right? It's an invitation to do something different.
yeah,
And
you have a seat at the table, and
yeah,
we're going to make sure that this conversation is not only robust, but at the end of it, there will be a call to action, and you'll all contribute to that. That's
yeah.
the beauty of it. So, what we're going to do here is we're almost to our 10 minutes, but we hinted that we wanted to talk about branded content. You've been doing it for a long time. So, maybe what we'll do is we'll just put
Mhm.
that on the back burner, and it's
Yeah.
evolved. Even since you started shooting videos for the local hardware stores, it's changed completely the horizon.
Yeah.
So we would like to think that this is a huge part and a step forward in that evolution. So what do you say we'll get more into the what is great branded content, who makes great branded content. We'll bring you some examples tomorrow. That work?
Sounds good.